Anything you say? I do. All right, I think we about to get ready to go. I don't know what I'm gonna be saying.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Our goal for today will just to be offering a learning opportunity and some insights into the sports business world in the Central Florida region. We're joined today by three great business leaders in the Orlando area and three sports business execs, Justin Kinsey, Daryl Fry, and Jen Lastik. We only got 45 minutes, so I'm going to kick it to you, Justin. Can you give us an introduction, what your role is, where you currently work?
Good morning. My name is Justin Kinsey. I'm the Region Vice President for REEF. So my day-to-day stuff sort of is just management of transportation, healthcare, parking operations, you name it, we do it all. But we really love the sports and entertainment industry.
Jen, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you, and just an honor to be here. My name is Jennifer Lastik. I'm the Senior Vice President of Events for the Greater Orlando Sports Commission. For those that you don't know, the Sports Commission is one of the only regional sports commissions left in the country. And we drive economic impact through sports and have hosted over 1,400 events during our time and generated $1.9 billion in economic impact.
Daryl, that leaves you.
Yep, so Darrell Fry, I'm the sports media director at Walt Disney World. And so me and my team, we oversee all of the media relations efforts related to the events, the 100+ events that we have at our sports complex, which is the ESPN Wide World of Sports Complex, as well as all the sports related events that take place on property at Walt Disney World. So it's everything from our we have sports celebrities that are in town, or we have sports related events that take place like our marathons and half marathons through our Run Disney program. So anything sports related, my team oversees, along with we oversee media relations from other aspects of the park, like our water parks and Disney Springs, but sports is our primary focus.
You know, I had a youth soccer tournament there. I've also been to the Pro Bowl there. Daryl, I'm sticking with you a little bit. Can you take me through your day-to-day? I know you guys do a lot. You're all over the place. Can you give us a little insight there?
Yeah, sure. You know, it's multifaceted. You know, it's everything from looking at our recurring calendar events, like which, you know, when the Pro Bowl was here, that was one of those things that was recurring each year, and looking at how we can generate media coverage for Walt Disney World and for those events. But it's also, you know, trying to be creative and creating some media opportunities to either get media to come on property and cover something at Disney, or it's coming up with an idea of creating some content that we can share with news media that's going to generate coverage. So it kind of runs the gamut.
And Jen, obviously in the event space, that's a wide breadth, right? When you say sports and events, can you take us a little through what your day-to-day looks like?
Yeah, so I oversee the events department, and that ranges from marquee events from March Madness to WrestleMania to, you know, smaller events with youth soccer and even synchronized swimming. I also oversee the marketing efforts, IT, the state grant program. And day to day is just working with our clients. We kind of do a custom-based service of what our clients' needs are, from helping recruit volunteers, marketing, public relations, a lot of government affairs, working with the state and local government entities as well. So really based on our customer needs is how we service them best.
And Justin, I know REEF with logistics, again, a wide breadth. Can you touch a little on what you do day to day and maybe how it's tangential to events and sports?
Yeah. So like Andrew said, logistics. So it doesn't matter what the industry is, you have to be able to do something or know how to get something done. So that's kind of what REEF does. In terms of sports and entertainment, we manage all of the outside experience for the guests and patrons coming to the stadiums or events. So that's people moving, parking cars, the path you travel on the highway to even get to the stadium. For the sports and entertainment industry, REEF does that primarily. Recently, we moved in, and this is with COVID, we moved into the healthcare space, where we did a lot of work out there with Daryl and those guys at Disney with the COVID-19 testing for the MLS tournament and the NBA bubble.
You know, logistics was a big topic this entire year, Justin, and you kind of touched on what you guys did. Can you take us through some of those challenges that you guys faced logistically and how you worked through it this year?
Oh, definitely. So March 12th, 2020, the world pretty much shut down and everyone's in panic, and it's now, what do you do? Not only as just a human being, but as a business leader, husband, all of this stuff. And you had to figure it all out. So from work, we had to furlough probably 80% of our staff in the region. And you got to figure out how to get people back working, and the people that you were able to keep, how to make sure you can justify them actually having a job at that time. So we had to get creative, and thankfully I'm at a forward thinking company that has a diversified business lines. We were able to pivot into healthcare. We did queuing apps, we did temperature screening, anything you can think of that was grocery delivery, beneficial to people at that time. We then moved into those spaces very quickly and began to bring people back to work and keep people working. So.
And Daryl, I'm going to hop over to you just because you're kind of tangential to what REEF did. You guys obviously had a lot of events. You guys were the center of the sports world for a little bit. Can you take us through those challenges and how you kind of turn it into an opportunity this year?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like a lot of places, particularly like the Citrus Bowl, it's all about, enhanced safety, and our health protocols. So we work very closely with the organizations that we work with, whether it was, Central Florida Sports or the NBA or the MLS, whoever, on those safe and healthy protocols. And as Justin talked about, we also at Disney, had to become a little leaner. We had to learn to do more with less. And I think is one of the things we did really well. And then just be more creative. How can you, get the work done and do it in ways that are different than ways you've done it before. And that's kind of the way you kind of mentioned, Andrew, as an opportunity. That's kind of the way we look at this whole situation at Disney, as more of an opportunity as opposed to a hindrance or a challenge. We're not at Disney, we're not talking about, and I think, every sports entity in Central Florida and beyond should be thinking the same way. We're not thinking about how we can get back to normal. That's what, you hear that all the time on the news, people talking about getting back to normal. We're not thinking about getting back to normal. We're thinking about how do we forge a new path to a new normal. How do we take what we've been doing these last, 12, 14 months, and learn how to drive our business in new and different and more creative ways. And so I think that's the way to be thinking about this. And that's the way we're thinking about it at Disney.
And I feel like you talked about opportunity. It's a perfect segue to you, Jen. I don't know if there's a sports commission that was more active when 2020 hit and brought in more events than the sports commission that you work for in Orlando. So can you take us through, again, what Daryl touched on, turning that challenge into an opportunity and those specific challenges that you guys had to overcome?
Yeah. So as a professional planner, you're always anticipating change, but there really was no playbook for the pandemic. Unfortunately, we did have about 20 events cancel in the beginning of the pandemic. But with Florida being one of the first states to kind of open up and our governor being a real sports fan, we also took that opportunity of when we did open up and being very collaborative with all of our sports partners, we were able to relocate and move some events out of different states to Florida as well, since we were open. And then speaking on like collaboration, in the beginning of this, in partnership with Orlando Venues, we did form a best practice group of over 20 sports partners from all the venues in town, all the pro teams, Florida Citrus Sports, UCF. And we met bi-weekly because everything was changing. And it's like, what is everyone doing? But we met bi-weekly. We had industry experts come in and speak to everyone from what are the insurance risks? How do we get the venues to have the cleaning accreditation? And we were also gathering just best practice and operation manuals from everywhere from overseas, because a lot of the sports leagues overseas opened up a little earlier than here. So seeing what they were doing. And again, it was constantly changing, but I think Orlando just being such a collaborative city, that's really helped us to move some of those events here and really work with each other on how we can continue to move forward.
And Jen, I'm going to stick with you a little bit, but just a reminder to the participants, you can submit questions using the Q&A at the bottom, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Jen, you talked about, taking those and moving them into opportunities, those challenges, and having those best practices. Is there anything as a professional and as your company looks at it, is there anything that you changed during the pandemic that you're going to keep and you realized was something that you could institute going forward?
Yeah, I would say two things, and it's just more of an education base. We did start with some of our government partners kind of requested. We started a bi-weekly newsletter at the time to send out information about testing, just the different grant programs for small businesses, et cetera. And we also opened that up to all of our other sports partners of events that they might be doing or virtual stuff, just to kind of be able to share that message. It used to go out twice a week. Now we're just doing once a week. But just sharing the messaging for all the partners, I think was a big key takeaway. And then I just think from a management style, this also just helped you had to manage your team differently, have more empathy. Everyone has handled it differently. So I think that was great of just connecting more with the team and staying in touch a lot more. So I think just the management style of the team has changed a bit as well.
And Daryl, we talked about the plethora of events that came through Disney throughout 2020, and you guys are obviously primed to take advantage of that. But is there anything that you guys learned, you adjusted to the challenges that you're going to continue going forward?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, I think we're learning, like I said, how to still create an extraordinary guest experience, or as we would like to say, a magical guest experience, for the people that come to Disney, both, in the parks as well as obviously at our sports complex. And, how do you do that in ways where you're still creating a safe environment that people feel comfortable and coming to. And so I think those lessons we're learning, how we're doing that now, are things that are going to continue well past, when the pandemic is over.
And Justin, again, logistics is the key word there, right? As you guys have moved through the pandemic, is there anything that you guys have learned that you're going to continue going forward?
As Jen alluded to, from a management style, I think we're going to keep some adaptation of the hybrid scheduling. Everyone doesn't need to be in the office. We have seen productivity through 2020 and the pandemic without everyone being in the office. And then the healthcare stuff and the ghost kitchens and stuff that we do, we are going full steam, full forge ahead with them. After the NBA bubble, and well, even during in the MLS tournament, we actually inked with the NFL. So in all of their stadiums, we do that those testing sites as well, and we'll just continue to expand the healthcare business into urban and rural communities by bringing healthcare options closer to people that don't have accessibility to rails or buses or anything like that. So.
And before we switch topics, I kind of want to toss it to a Q&A question, asking, what are you guys going to do to continue to grow the Orlando sports event space going forward? And Jen, I'm going to start with you and tee you up for the World Cup, but I know you got a lot of other stuff going on.
Yeah, we're always looking to reinforce kind of Mayor Dyer's quote of Orlando being the #1 sports destination. So we're really, focused on growing that and staying close to all of our partners, but taking a focus on international sports as well as esports, because we know that's a growing industry in itself. But yes, one of our most exciting projects and kind of my baby is the 2026 FIFA World Cup. If you're not familiar, North America won the bid to host the World Cup in 2026. So there'll be matches in the US, Mexico, and Canada. There's 17 cities still in the running for the US, and FIFA will be narrowing that down to 10 cities. It was supposed to be announced last year, but obviously COVID has changed that schedule a little bit. So we're still working through all the different timelines and projects with them, but hopefully they will be announcing the cities in the end of this year.
And Daryl, I know you talked about those reoccurring events that are always coming through. Is there anything that you're working on now that you're excited about that you think is going to build that profile?
Well, yeah, and that's another offshoot, from the pandemic, because we're just continuing to, look to bring in bigger, more impactful events. I mean, coming off of having the NBA season here and MLS, we have on the horizon lots of other events coming up, and one in particular is the Warrior Games. Is having their event here in September. So that's something we're really looking forward to. Remember we had the Invictus Games here before. So this is very similar to that, just of inspiring athletes, these veterans. So that's a big one that's on the horizon, as well as the Spelling Bee, the National Spelling Bee, believe it or not, which has been in Washington, D.C. for years and years and years, is now coming to our place this summer. So we're really excited about those, and we're really focused on continue to bring in even more impactful and big time events like those to try to, continue to enhance the profile of Central Florida as like the sports destination.
And Justin, I know we've talked logistics a lot, but innovation comes at the same price with REEF. And there's a lot you guys are doing. Is there anything you can touch on how you guys are innovating going forward?
So I think the word of the year outside of COVID-19 should be contactless. And everywhere we went, all over the country, everything was contactless if it was open. So we started to integrate technology more into our operations to be able to be contactless and enhance the customer experience for patrons that may come to the event. So as long as Daryl and Jen keep bringing them in here, we'll be ready to receive them and welcome them into the buildings and have great events again here in the City Beautiful.
And I'm going to kind of switch topics on you guys a little bit and move back in the years and talk about, you guys growing up, your careers and how they were built. Justin, sticking with you a little bit, because you think REEF technology, you don't necessarily right away think sports, but you're involved in other stuff like Florida Citrus Sports, you're on the board, involved with FCA at UCF. Can you talk about how your career has taken you to this point and how you've stayed tangential to sports while not necessarily being at something someone view as a sports organization?
It honestly happened. Well, I don't believe in luck, but it happened by luck. I got stuck in this. It was never my desire coming out of college to work in this industry, but I got into it and fell in love with it, and just began to, the opportunity happened at the Amway Center. And once I got there and saw the power of partnership and how all of the parts work together, it just made me want to get deeper and deeper and more involved into, you know, making things happen, making sure experiences are right, and yeah, just do things beyond parking. You never want to be a one-trick pony. You always want to have more to offer and be pliable and adaptable to be able to do anything. So that's kind of where I am now and where REEF is, not just being pigeonholed or locked into one industry, but able to touch all industries.
And Daryl, I know you were a sports writer for a little bit and then transitioned into communications with Disney. Can you kind of talk about that transition and where your career path took you?
Yeah, and I mean, that's a very common journey, I think, for a lot of PR folks. You know, starting out as a journalist first, I did it for 16 years over at the Tampa Bay Times newspaper covering sports. You know, everything from the Magic to the Bucks to the NFL, to tennis and NASCAR, you name it, kind of thing. And so that really, I think, prepared me very well for the switch over into communications and the public relations. So I started out, I initially made that jump with the Women's Tennis Association as their director of corporate communications for 3 years before, you know, coming to Disney. Now I've been in this role at Disney for 15 years. And so, you know, having that media background, those media relationships, has really served me well, because, you know, in this role, you not only need to know what journalists really need and want, but, you know, more importantly, what they don't want and what they don't need. So that background serves me well every day in this role.
And Jen, I know you've been with the Sports Commission for a little bit now, but I also know that you were in Pennsylvania for a little bit for college. You went to West Virginia for your master's. Can you take us through that journey as someone who grew up in DC and went to school in St. Louis and then ended up in Orlando? I know that journey well, but can you walk us through, you know, how you grew into a new environment and kind of got to your role currently?
Yeah. One thing I always preach is networking and who you know. So yes, I went to school at Slippery Rock, and then went to grad school at West Virginia. And thankfully, I was able to secure an internship at Disney Sports through my grad program. And while I was at Disney, the UCF Arena was hiring, and the general manager there used to work at Disney. So when he was hiring, he reached out. I, again, luck and just knowing individuals, was able to secure a job at UCF Arena. I was their event manager there for about a year when the marketing manager left to go to the Sports Commission. And about a month or two later, he recruited me to the Sports Commission. And have been there for 14 years now. So I never thought coming to Disney for my internship that I would stay in Florida, but now I can't see myself leaving. And even at school, I never knew what sports commissions were or if they existed when I was in college, but it comes full circle. When I was at Slippery Rock, I was interning for the athletic department, and they were part of the NCAA festival down in Florida, and the NCAA flew me down to help work it. And at that time, I didn't know the Sports Commission was actually hosting it. And now I'm working for the Sports Commission, and we are going to host it in a few years again. So it's kind of a full circle. Like Justin said, I don't believe in luck. You have to be prepared, but you also have to use your networks well as too.
Jen, I'm going to stick with you just because we had a Q&A come in for you. You'd mentioned Mayor Dyer and your work with him. Can you touch on that private and public relationship and how it helps build Orlando as a whole and as a sports community?
Yeah. So as a regional sports commission, we represent Lake County, Osceola, Seminole, Orange, and the city of Orlando. So we work with each of those government partners to bring in sports, again, to build on economic impact. So to have the team stay, the fans come in and stay and go to the restaurants as well as the parks afterwards. So we work very closely with each of the partners, government partners. And we are publicly and privately funded. So from a public standpoint, it's those government entities. But from a private standpoint, we have a very diverse board with a lot of sports and hospitality partners on it. And that's from our private funding side as well.
And Justin, I know you guys do a lot of work with the city logistically for one, but can you touch on that relationship between private and public?
Yeah, it's absolutely necessary for anything to happen. I mentioned partnership earlier. You can't do it all by yourself, so you need good partners. So like Jen, we work with Orange County, City of Orlando, governments, City of Jacksonville, City of Tampa to help support when these events come in, to just add that extra layer of this is how we're going to get it done. So it has to happen. We have to work with the transportation engineers, all of the DOT people, just to make sure thoroughways are clear. Emergency vehicle needs to come through. Everything can happen to make sure the event goes off as seamlessly as possible.
I'll touch on that. Sorry, Justin.
No.
So, right, you need the private and public. Even during COVID, there was times, as I mentioned, when we were relocating some events here, the governor's office was on the phone, the mayor's office was on the phone. They had to clear some of these events and fans and athletes to travel. So you really cannot do this and get all of these events here if you didn't have that partnership and collaboration.
And Daryl, talking about collaboration, I know you worked with Justin on a lot of the stuff that came through in 2020. Can you talk about those partnerships? I know there's a lot of people that view Disney as its own entity, just living and breathing, but obviously there's a lot more that goes into it.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the key things you learn really quickly working at Disney is that, you don't get anything done by yourself. And that's both from an internal standpoint of working with, your colleagues to get things done, as well as, on those events we have, particularly at the sports complex, it's working with those external partners, like the sports commission or city and county officials. And so, because you think about our sports complex, the ESPN Wireless Sports Complex is actually located in Osceola County. So we're working with, Visit Kissimmee, I work with the, Osceola County officials, as well as, we're working with Orange County officials and Sports Commission, and lots of partners like that. So nothing really happens without a collaborative effort between both our internal partners and our external ones.
I will tell you that if you can pass code and inspection at Disney, you can do it anywhere in the world.
I knew that was coming.
We got it done though.
We're thorough.
Yeah.
Building on that a little, Justin, I know you worked closely on the NBA bubble and some of those other events. Is there anything that you didn't anticipate, a challenge that kind of popped up during COVID that you guys had to adjust specifically?
I didn't hear you, Andrew.
Is there any challenge that popped up during the NBA bubble that you guys were kind of surprised by that you had to adjust? Anything that you didn't anticipate?
So one of the interesting things was lights. So this whole parking lot in front of the arena there was transitioned into a working city almost. So you had medical out there, you had TV, and we had to do all of this stuff. But one thing, so we got everything set up and we're like, all right, we're ready to go. This guy comes by and said, we have to shut you down. You can't operate. I'm like, what's wrong? And he said, you don't have enough lighting. So every, I think 100 feet, there has to be some sort of light in the path at Disney. And we had to go out and get external lights, put lights on the different trailers just for them to clear us to be able to operate. And none of us anticipated it.
Daryl, can I ask you the same question? The answer can be lights also, but I'm just curious.
Lights. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, we had to be very nimble. There were a lot of external factors and things that were happening along with the NBA bubble that was there. And then you think about some of the social justice things that were happening around our country at that time. And there were, obviously times where the NBA decided to not play games, for a couple of days there. So our staff, we had to be very nimble and very fluid and react to these different things that were happening in terms of scheduling and the facilities. And so it was an interesting experience, and one that I think we learned a lot from, and one that we can use going forward.
And Jen, something we haven't really touched on a little bit is the sports commission's role in bringing something like the NBA bubble to Disney. Because again, if you're watching from Maryland, where my parents were, they thought Disney put it on entirely. And obviously, Daryl touched on the partners that came into it. Can you touch kind of on your role in bringing in the MLS is back, just all those events that came through?
Yeah, I will say that, we helped a little bit, but the majority was, all Disney and MLS and the NBA. I will say that it definitely helped us from a World Cup perspective of all the eyes are on Orlando and making us really, known globally. And even though we didn't have a lot of impact on those bubbles, we definitely used it to our advantage. For World Cup, we're also working with international media representatives. We have biweekly calls with them and work on different stories to be distributed monthly. And a lot of that was around the bubble in the beginning. So even though we didn't have a full operational mode or role in that, we definitely used it to our advantage to make sure that we're still keeping Orlando front and center.
And can you touch a little bit on that? You talked about visibility and helping as you move forward with the World Cup bid, as you've called your baby. Obviously, Orlando has become a hub for international soccer recently with the She Believes Cup and things coming through. Can you touch a little bit how you've leveraged what we've done this year to kind of build for the future?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I think a few times, we are a very unique city and very collaborative. There's a lot of other sports cities where they kind of work in silos. And I think our collaborative nature has helped tremendously with clients just knowing when they come to Orlando, everything's going to be taken care of from every aspect that I think we've all talked about. So really just working closely with each of those entities from US Soccer to CONCACAF, making sure, reaching out and not waiting for them to reach to us, but like reaching out to them of, hey, we're here for you. If you need any events to come here, like look at all the success we've had. So being very proactive and making sure that we're continuing to build those relationships and making Orlando, I think Mayor Darrell likes to call it the soccer capital of the South. So we want to make sure we're reinforcing that.
And touching a little on that, Daryl, you guys hosted the MLS and the NBA at the same time. Was there anything that came up during that time that you guys didn't see coming?
That's one of the things that I learned being at Disney is preparation is just critical. And at Disney, we really try to anticipate all the various scenarios that can be thrown at you for an event. So I think we're pretty well prepared. I think that the big challenge with the NBA and MLS is that it came together so quickly. It was a matter of several weeks between the time when the conversations first started through the time when the first basketballs were tipped off and the first soccer balls were struck. So it was a compressed amount of time. So we had to work really quickly in a short amount of time to pull it off. But, I think that that's just an opportunity where our staff and our team really rose to the challenge and made it happen. So I think we're pretty proud of that.
Absolutely. Switching gears a little bit here. I know I'm moving quickly. We got 12 minutes on the clock. A Q&A coming in. If you guys were talking to your younger self, so Justin, I'll start with you, just in that you touched on how you didn't know you were going to get involved with any of this. Is there any advice you would give to a younger Justin as he's starting his career?
I'd do it all the same. No advice. I'll probably be more patient and maybe have a little less fun in college. But other than that, hey man, let's keep it rolling.
Jen, I'll toss it to you after Justin doesn't want to change a thing.
I would say really just believing in myself, finding my voice and just taking a seat at the table. I think that's been a challenge, a career challenge for myself. Just also like gender equity in the sports field. But that would be my main, is to use my voice and take a seat at the table.
Daryl, sorry.
Yeah, maybe I would have been a little more intentional about it. I think kind of growing up, my parents really instilled a sense of just kind of doing what you love, and so that's kind of guided me throughout my career. Is that I really haven't been very intentional about where I worked and what's the next step in my career and how is this step going to lead to the next step. I was just enjoying the work that I was doing and looked at all future opportunities through that same lens. Is this something that is going to be enjoyable, something I'm going to enjoy doing, something I'm going to be passionate about doing, as opposed to being very calculating about what my next steps are. So I think it would have been a little more of a combination of the two, I think, if I had it to do over again, but really can't complain about how things turned out.
And kind of sticking with the topic with this Q&A, Justin, I'm coming back to you, hoping you got an answer to this one. Is there a mentor along your way that, touched you? Was there a moment that helped you along the way? And I think this question, I kind of digressed a little bit, but it's focusing on that importance of mentorship throughout your career.
Yeah, so definitely, you got to have mentorships, you got to have good relationships and people in your corner. As we said earlier, you just don't get there by yourself. But a mentor that helped me along the way that nobody on this call would believe, and we still talk to this day a lot. Remember the name Michael Thompson, Jennifer? So Michael Thompson was a mentor to me since 2011, and he kind of guided me, helped me believe in myself a little more, and gave me a ton of just educational stuff to learn and make sure I was aware of to be able to be successful back when I was a project manager. So, 10 years now to reach the executive level, he did a lot in helping me in the professional world. I love that man to death for that.
Can you touch a little bit on how that mentorship came to be? Like how it started? Was he a boss? Was he a friend?
He was a client, and a lot of people saw him as just like a stickler, mean. She's laughing. She knows those stories. But I went to him one day, and I had the UCF grad school packet in my hand, and he looked at it and he said, "You're going to grad school?" I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "No, you're not." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Yeah." He asked me that I have $200. I said, "Yeah, I got it." And he told me to give it to him. And he came back with like 9 books. And he said, "Here's $32 in change. And if you read these 9 books, there's your MBA." And yeah, that's kind of how it started. So it went from me asking him questions about those books and just the day-to-day interaction with bringing the events into the city. And it kind of just grew into that. And we're rivals in football. Go Dogs all day long. He loves those guys over in Gainesville.
And I don't want to harp on you a little bit. Do you remember what any of those books were? You don't have to give us the full MBA, but just a little taste.
Getting to Yes, The Art of Negotiation was one of them. 60 seconds and you're hired. So having your elevator speech and that pitch ready. 7 Habits of Successful People. And the 4 Agreements. That's 4 of them. I mean, a few more. I can't think of all of the titles off the top of my head, but if I had to recommend any of them, those 4 that I said, I would tell everybody to become well acquainted with those books.
And I'll admit that I read the 4 Agreements, Justin, after you posted on LinkedIn, I think midway through the pandemic. So I'll give you a little shout out there. Shifting over, Jen, any mentorship, anything that helped you along the way?
Yeah, one of my professors at Slippery Rock has helped me a lot, definitely starting my career. And then lately, Shelley Lawton, she is a community leader. She really helps me out as well, just navigating the corporate culture and just navigating, anything in my career. I'm also really big in making sure you give back, because I think, as Justin said, you need cheerleaders by your side, but also growing and opening doors for people behind you. I am a founding member of WISE Greater Orlando, which is a national organization. So it's the Orlando chapter of Women in Sports and Events. And I am excited. We're launching our mentor program this year. So we're excited to have that and be able to give that back to the generations below us.
And if someone wanted to get involved with WISE in Greater Orlando, do you know how they would do that?
You could visit the website. Not sure the full link, but WISE Greater Orlando.
Perfect. Daryl, any mentorship along the way? Anything that helped you there?
Yeah, there were a couple. I think early on in my career, when I was a journalist, Michael Wilbon, who's on ESPN, but back then he worked for the Washington Post, and I grew up in the suburbs of Washington D.C., so we were kind of from the same area, and he was really influential throughout my journalism career in terms of I think he really probably believed in me more than I believed in myself back at that time, and was very influential in helping me make certain connections and building relationships with other journalists and editors, people who could help me in my journalism career, and being a sounding board in terms of any sort of career moves I was making back in that time. I would kind of run those by him, and he'd provide guidance and advice. And then I think once I switched over to PR, I think starting at the Women's Tennis Association, the CEO at the time was a guy named Larry Scott, who's now, as you know, the commissioner of the Big 12 Conference out of Cali. And Larry is really instrumental, with the whole PR industry, because even though he was a CEO, he really knew quite a bit about public relations. He knew a lot about a lot of things. He's one of the smartest people I think I've ever met. But he really helped me in terms of learning how to handle big events, and how I think back then, I think a lot of us kind of get really excited when we're dealing with a big event, we're at a big event, and just kind of running around and making sure everything goes smoothly and as planned. And so Larry really taught me about actually it's your preparation, well beforehand, that can set you up for success, so that when the big event arrives, that's when you're the most calm, is when the event is there, because you've already done all of the necessary work, you have all the contingency plans in place. And so that's when you can kind of just really take it down a notch and just sort of manage the event. So I learned quite a bit from him, and still learn things from him all the time. Like I said, I really believe he's like one of the smartest people I've ever worked with.
And as we close down, I'll let everyone get out before noon, but I'll give you each an opportunity to, share some final insights, some final words of advice. But I will say, someone in the Q&A asked what your guys' favorite sports team is. So if you want to end with that. Sorry, Justin, I know we're going to go with favorite sports team, but I'll start with you.
Yeah, no brainer. It should be everyone's favorite sports team, but UGA football, hands down.
Jen?
Gotta go with my Pittsburgh Steelers.
Daryl, I'm hoping it's a DC team, but we'll see where it goes.
I'm, obviously Florida State Seminoles all the way, but in the NFL, it's the Miami Dolphins.
Got no love. It's all right. We move through. From everyone on the panel, everyone participating, I appreciate you three joining us and giving us insights. I learned a lot, if no one else did, but I enjoyed it, and I appreciate you guys.
Thanks.
Andrew.
Thank you.